I'm Henning Melber. I'm an extraordinary professor with the Center for Gender and Africa Studies at the University of the Free State. And I'm also an extraordinary professor at the Department of Political Sciences at the University of Pretoria. And in both affiliations, I've been in responsible positions to edit journals. It was the Strategic Review for Southern Africa at the University of Pretoria, and it's since more than a year now Acta Academica at UFS. Acta Academica is accredited open access journal, and it's published mainly on critical theory in the disciplines of sociology, political sciences, to some extent philosophy, social anthropology, and related studies, with some special focus on aspects of gender, post-development, post-colonialism, anti-racism. So it's very much a journal in the humanities, but it's also value-based. While we accept diversity of contributions, we follow certain ethical and moral guidelines. So just to use an example of lately, there were quite controversial debates about articles justifying colonialism in peer-reviewed journals. I would dare to say that Acta Academica would not accept such articles for publication. We don't think we provide a forum for positions and views as scholarly as they might claim to be, which justify deeply rooted social inequalities or political inequalities. We would not advocate supremacist thoughts of any kind, be it white supremacy, but also other efforts justifying hierarchies and social injustice. So in that sense, we are a value-based journal, which of course applies strict academic criteria. So the articles are peer-reviewed, and even if they basically appeal to our moral and ethical compass, we would only publish them if they meet the scholarly criteria. So that is, of course, the bottom line. But it's a combination of sound scholarly criteria, plus values based on certain ethics which are committed to the promotion of human rights, one could say. So the normative frameworks which are actually in place and should be adhered to.
What do you think would specifically attract authors to your journal?
First of all, I think the profile, as I just summarized, that authors who contribute to Acta Academica, I hope would feel in very good company concerning the positions and views expressed by other contributors, despite all the diversity which is there. But also that it is an open access journal, which means we reach out in an unlimited way. Authors who publish with Acta can immediately share their publications with whoever they want. And Acta also advertises via Twitter and other social media, once an issue is out, that these are the articles with links, that they are accessible. So I'm a strong believer in open access journals because they transcend the material divide between what still is there in the North-South asymmetric power relations. An open access journal can be read by everyone wherever they are, provided they have access to internet and can download or read online those articles. But in commercial publishing houses, some of the most prominent ones, access to articles require the payment of $40 or above. Otherwise, one cannot actually read the articles, which is such a divide, also a social divide and a North-South divide, because who, for example, in Southern Africa, can afford to access articles of relevance if you have to pay $40 to read them within 24 hours. So that is, I believe strongly, another huge incentive for journals like Acta Academica and others who are open access, because and peer-reviewed and accredited. I mean, it's the combination, of course. So you are a recognized journal in which you publish gives you the brownies you want to see, especially when you are a younger scholar or in your midterm academic career, where you have to keep an eye on where you publish. And at the same time, you can share it with as many people as possible, which also means by enhancing your reach out, you also enhance your chances that it's acknowledged and quoted, because that is something, again, for a scholarly career. You want to have readers and you want to have citations. And if you publish in a peer-reviewed, accredited, open access journal, then these chances are pretty good. And we can see in the more recent years that Acta has become rather attractive also for younger scholars, but it's also an attractive platform for established scholars who then can afford to say for them open access is more important than a journal with limited access, which might have a higher citation index, because they don't need those brownies of an early career scholar any longer. So they say, well, fine, perfect. If we can publish in an accredited open access journal, we go for that.
I asked Prof. Melber to expand a little bit on using Twitter for research.
I wish also the authors would make better use of it, because very often authors have the tendency, they see their text published and then they tick it off and say, okay, now let's move on to the next article. While I normally try to convince them, once your article is published, the real work starts, because it doesn't help you to publish the best article in the world if nobody knows about it. You have to make it known. You can't just add it to your CV and say, done. No. If you want to be read, then it's also up to you to promote it, to share it via emails to colleagues, to put it on Twitter, to share it on Facebook, or whatever means they have in the social media. So they have to self-promote it, and there's nothing wrong. I mean, academia is to a large extent about self-promotion. Look at all the dons. What are they doing? They are self-promoting. So younger scholars should do the same. Authors being proactive and promoting their own writings. And by doing that, of course, they also promote Acta, because usually that's the thing you do. If I go for a certain article in a journal, and maybe I haven't even come across the journal before, then I'm curious, because then I look, are there similar articles? Are there articles which also hit my interest? So if you have proactive authors, they also promote, at least indirectly, the journal.
Being an open access journal, do you charge page fees or author processing charges?
Nothing. No. I mean, then it's not any longer open access. I mean, that is then cheating. That's cheating. Open access means it comes at no cost. But that also means it comes at no cost for the authors.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you risk to be a predatory journal. That, of course, touches on a very important prerequisite for most open access journals, because they are, of course, subsidized. So if UFS or UP or any other institution would not be willing to accommodate such a journal institutionally with the services that are implied, then the cost factor would kick in. So basically, such open access journals are at least indirectly, or rather directly even, funded by the institutions. But I think it's justified in the sense of an academic journal published by a university like ours and others by UFS, because it also adds to the profile of the university. assuming at least that those who take note of the journals do so predominantly in a positive way and say, oh, that's a very interesting academic journal. And if they then realize that's published by the University of the Free State, that of course adds to the reputation of the home institution, meaning the University of the Free State, which also then means the university, which already kind of subsidizes the journal, should also promote the journal as an asset it has and of which it is proud of.
Have you considered any other open practices in the journal, like open peer review?
No. We share, of course, the comments by the reviewers with the authors, but we are keeping them anonymous. And normally you get reviews where in some cases you think it's good that they are not known as reviewers. And there are reviewers who also stress that should be double-blind review, or at least anonymous reviews. What we try to avoid is that we create conflicts, that we get reviewers who, for whatever reasons, often personal reasons, might not be as neutral or constructive as we expect them to do. The whole review business is quite a tricky one. But I do not think that with open review, you would reduce the problems. You might actually increase them, and it gets most likely even more difficult to find reviewers. Already now, it's a really tough job to get reviewers. Sometimes we get back reviews, they are so biased that we say, that is not a review we want to share. Now, if you introduce a system where these are immediately posted open, you would not be able to prevent that unless you build in something which then would be perceived as a kind of censorship.
Yeah.
So that we say we first look at them and then we put them open, which is again a double standard. So I think it's rather to be on the safe side and have double-blind peer reviews where we can also then decide what of the reviews is constructive, which we want to share with the authors, and what of the reviews is of a way where we think, oh, maybe the reviewer just feels that's encroaching on his or her home turf and is too critical. You know, when they say they haven't quoted my 7 articles.
So you were speaking, about the more, traditional publishing houses and how much money they make. But do you think it's more challenging to publish an open access journal than, let's call it, a traditional journal?
I don't think it's more challenging. I would say it's more fun because you create a public good. And I think that is the difference. At least for me, it makes a difference. I have been now the editor in total of 3 open access journals. And it was always an incentive and a motivation that all the work you put there, unpaid work, that it is for creating a public good. That others are not making money out of it, which then you feel a bit abused or exploited. The self-exploitation serves a general purpose, an ethical value, so to say. So I think otherwise the challenge is the same. You want to have top quality. You want to apply the same criteria. You want to compete with the commercial journals to show that you can be as good as any commercial journal when you are open access. So I think, based on my experience, there is not any. Well, the only difference could be that if you edit journal in a commercial publishing house, that the pressure could be much bigger because they put the pressure on you. And that's a pressure which exists only indirectly if you publish like Acta or some other open access journal, because I think it's even more appreciated by the institutions that you do the work. And they are a bit more lenient when it takes 1 month longer until the journal is printed. Despite the fact that very often also journals published in commercial publishing houses are strikingly delayed. I just had a case with Brill Publishers, a very established Dutch publishing house. They published an issue of a journal 16 months later than they should have. And I thought,
Sure.
wow, that would have never happened with ACT because we do put the pressure on ourselves. But so the challenge is, I don't think there is a big difference in the challenges because we are all ambitious. We all want to provide good work. And maybe the pressure is even bigger because we know that everyone can visit and check the journal. So we want to make sure that it's really meeting basic standards.
And especially avoiding that predatory label.
Absolutely. The predatory label, that comes in when the authors are asked to pay page fees. Or you even have it that the commercial publishing houses, well, they are not predatory, but they say you can buy the open access. And then you have institutions, established universities, they have funds for that. So, and that's the real, that's really pretty annoying. Then you have authors who work free of charge, publish in a commercial journal which has a high reputation, and then the institution pays that the journal puts it open access at least for a limited period of time. So they even make more money by putting it open access. I think that's bordering to a scandal. And the other scandal is that universities do actually support that. That's another message maybe which we haven't talked about yet. I think the value of open access journals is not yet fully recognized by universities. And I now refer explicitly to Southern African universities. They are still fixated that quality means you have to publish in one of the top-notch international journals by commercial publishing houses. And then they are even willing to fund if it's open access. And they give you more brownies, at least some of the universities, not all, but I know of some of the South African universities. They give you more money when you publish in one of these journals as if you publish in one of the accredited journals, which are open access. And that's scandalous, you know. As long as this is the case, we are fighting against hurdles we should not have. It's not fair, you know. You should actually have a different framework. A university, especially in the global south, should say preference should be given to top quality open access journals, which meet all the requirements and criteria to be fully accredited as scholarly periodicals. And then you should say they should at least treat it as good, if not more, than those journals in commercial publishing houses where the article is behind a paywall and basically not accessible for the overwhelming majority of scholars. Well, I think we face an uphill battle because knowledge production takes place in a commercialized world. And the journal situation just testifies to that. But we are making inroads. And you mentioned some of the things, these southern initiatives of open access journals, these kind of exchange platforms where you can have a registry, which are the open access journals, where it is promoted, where it's put in a positive, affirmative context that these are open access journals. And I think that's important. And it's also important to note that similar discussions also take place by committed and concerned scholars in the global north. It's an issue not only when it comes to journals, but also when it comes to books. I mean, you have commercial publishers, they publish a book for £100. And then they sell the individual chapters for £40. I mean, it's obscene. It's absolutely obscene.
It is.
And it provokes the counter tendencies. The problem is they can afford to do so because they are considered the most, the publishing houses with the highest reputation. But that is something for the institutions involved in knowledge production to change. if the universities would say, we change our paradigms, we change our criteria, we shift the goalposts, and for us, open access publishing, given that the quality is ensured, counts more than publishing through these established commercial global publishing houses. And if research foundations, NRF and others, when they offer grants, would say, and we have a discussion about this in the Norwegian Research Council where I'm involved, and in other research councils, to say, why don't we put aside a certain amount when we grant a research application and say, you have to publish the results open access and in a local context, especially the North-South relations with these global asymmetries, because we otherwise reproduce these non-reciprocal power relations. Then Northern Research Council give money to Northern researchers. They employ Southern colleagues to do the empirical footwork, and then they publish under their names, give credit in a footnote to the Southern colleagues, and they publish in an international journal, which is not open access, and then they get the brownies for it. And so the whole system needs to be tackled. And actually, also the top management in universities shifts the goalposts and says, no, if we have established scholars who manage to publish in good journals, open access, then that is something we want to see.
As a librarian, I promote open access, but I kind of feel hesitant to just promise an author, okay, but you will get more citations. So as an author's perspective, your perspective, does it necessarily give you a chance at more citations?
I think there is a simple answer. If you publish a very good article, then your chances that you are cited are much bigger than if it's a lousy article, no matter where you publish it. Look, it's not, the decisive element is not if the journal is open access or if it's behind a paywall. The decisive aspect is it needs to strike a chord. It needs to be on a topical issue, which is currently relevant and debated, widely debated. And then it also depends on your individual network and your efforts to promote the article. And in that case, if you are good in that, then it helps tremendously if the article is open access. Then it kicks in. So then it comes as an opportunity.